Out on the open plains, a lone rider sits tall in the saddle. The sun burns hot, and the sound of hoofbeats carries across the empty horizon. For cowboys and cavalry alike, the difference between life and death often came while mounted, where the way a man reached for his weapon mattered as much as the weapon itself. One wrong move could be fatal. But one clever draw could mean survival.
Appears to do, yes.
In this video, we'll uncover the forgotten techniques that made the fastest riders and sharpest gunmen legends of the frontier. From dangerous improvisations that cost men their lives, to cunning draws that turned fear into victory. You're about to see how much survival depended on the smallest details. So, the real question is,
just a bit sooner than y'all was expecting.
would your draw keep you alive or leave you in the dirt? Death from an unexpected angle. At first glance, the reverse draw looks like a gunfighter, wearing his holster backwards by mistake. The grip of the revolver faces forward, seemingly impossible to reach in any practical manner. But this unusual positioning concealed one of the most devastating quick-draw techniques ever developed on the American frontier. Also known as the plains draw or cavalry draw, this method required the shooter to invert their hand completely, reaching across their body to grasp the weapon with their palm facing upward. The motion looked awkward to untrained eyes, but in the hands of an expert, it became poetry of violence. The draw began with a sweeping motion across the torso, the hand naturally rotating as it pulled the weapon free from its leather home. What made this carry style particularly lethal was the element of surprise it provided. Opponents expecting a traditional draw would be caught off guard by the unconventional motion, often hesitating just long enough to seal their fate. The reverse draw also offered a significant advantage when mounted on horseback, allowing cavalry soldiers and mounted gunfighters to clear their weapons without the awkward reach around required by standard hip holsters. The technique demanded extensive practice to master safely. One wrong move could result in the barrel sweeping across the shooter's own torso during the draw, a potentially fatal mistake if the weapon discharged accidentally. Military units particularly favored this method because it kept the weapon secure during mounted combat while still allowing for rapid deployment. The forward-facing grip also meant the gun was less likely to catch on equipment or saddle rigging during frantic maneuvers. For civilian gunfighters, the reverse draw represented a commitment to unconventional warfare, a willingness to train harder and think differently than their opponents. The psychological warfare aspect cannot be understated. Seeing a gunfighter with a seemingly backwards holster often confused opponents about the threat level they were facing. This momentary confusion provided precious milliseconds that could determine the outcome of a deadly encounter. Those who perfected the reverse draw gained a tactical advantage that often proved decisive in life or death situations. Training for this method required hundreds of hours of practice to develop the muscle memory necessary for consistent execution. The hand position felt unnatural at first, and many practitioners struggled with the inverted grip required for effective weapon control. The sweeping motion across the torso had to become second nature, flowing smoothly from rest position to combat ready without conscious thought. But this psychological warfare approach came with real risks, and mastering it separated the truly dedicated from the merely ambitious. Number 6. The shoulder holster. Hidden death from above. Beneath the dusty coats and worn vests of frontier businessmen, gamblers, and undercover lawmen lurked a weapon system that could end a confrontation before it truly began. The shoulder holster represented concealment taken to its logical extreme, transforming an ordinary-looking citizen into a walking arsenal. Early shoulder rigs were crude affairs, little more than leather straps and pouches that held the weapon against the ribs under the armpit. The draw required a straight upward motion that telegraphed the shooter's intentions to anyone paying attention. But as the technique evolved, so did the hardware. Spring clips and pivot mechanisms allowed the weapon to swing outward during the draw, creating a smooth arc that brought the gun into firing position with deadly efficiency. The psychological advantage of concealment cannot be overstated in the context of Old West violence. While opponents focused on visible weapons and traditional draw positions, the shoulder holster user maintained the element of complete surprise. Card games, business negotiations, and social encounters could transform into combat situations in milliseconds, with the concealed weapon appearing as if materialized from thin air. Professional gamblers particularly favored this carry method because it kept their hands free for cards while maintaining instant access to lethal force. The shoulder holster allowed them to participate normally in games and conversations, all while remaining ready to defend their winnings or their lives. Detectives and undercover agents found similar advantages in the system's discretion. The technique required developing new muscle memory patterns completely different from hip draw methods. The motion began with the strong side arm crossing the chest, fingers finding the grip beneath the opposite armpit. The draw then swept outward and down, bringing the weapon into a natural pointing position. Skilled practitioners could complete this motion in under a second, while maintaining perfect concealment until the moment of truth. The concealment factor made shoulder holsters particularly valuable in towns with strict weapon ordinances or social situations where visible firearms were discouraged. However, the shoulder holster demanded specific clothing choices and body positioning to work effectively. Heavy coats or vests were essential for concealment, making the method less practical in hot climates or situations requiring freedom of movement. The weight of the weapon also created fatigue during extended wear, and the position could print through thin fabric, revealing the concealed weapon to observant opponents. The draw technique itself presented unique challenges. The upward motion required careful control to avoid flagging bystanders or the shooter's own face with the muzzle. The confined space under the arm made quick access challenging during physical altercations, and the unusual angle of presentation affected accuracy compared to traditional hip draws. Despite these limitations, master practitioners of shoulder holster techniques gained reputations that preceded them throughout frontier towns. The ability to remain completely concealed while maintaining instant access to lethal force made them formidable opponents in any confrontation. Yet for those who mastered its intricacies, the shoulder holster offered unmatched versatility in the deadly game of frontier survival. If you're as fascinated by these hidden stories as we are, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps us know what content you love. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the Wild West's most legendary weapons. Number 5, the cross draw. Mounted warrior's lethal choice. When cowboys spent 12 hours in the saddle pursuing cattle across endless plains, they needed a weapon carry system that worked as well mounted as it did on foot. The cross draw positioned the holster on the weak side of the body with the grip angled toward the strong hand, creating one of the most versatile and deadly carry styles of the Old West era. Unlike the traditional strong side draw, the cross draw allowed mounted fighters to clear their weapons without the awkward contortions required when a gun hung from the same side as the drawing hand. The natural motion swept across the body in a smooth arc, bringing the weapon up and into firing position with fluid grace. For cattle drivers facing rustlers, range wars, or hostile encounters, this advantage could mean the difference between returning home or being left for the buzzards. The cross draw also offered superior access when seated, whether in a saloon chair, behind a desk, or crouched behind cover. The angle of the holster and the natural mechanics of the draw meant the weapon cleared leather faster from these positions than traditional carry methods. This made it particularly popular among professional gamblers, saloon keepers, and anyone whose work required long periods of sitting while remaining ready for violence. The cross draw's true lethality lay in its deceptive nature. The positioning appeared less aggressive than a strong side holster, often lulling opponents into underestimating the carrier's speed and intention. The draw motion looked almost casual until the moment the weapon cleared the holster and swung into alignment. Many gunfighters met their end because they misread the threat posed by a cross-draw setup. Competitive shooters in the modern sport of cowboy action shooting often employ dual holsters, one strong side, one cross-draw. This allows them to fire one weapon empty and immediately transition to the fresh gun with the same hand. This border shift technique was also used historically when gunfighters needed maximum firepower in extended engagements. The ability to maintain a full weapon while reloading the empty one provided a crucial tactical advantage during prolonged conflicts. The cross-draw demanded different training from traditional methods, requiring the shooter to develop muscle memory for the sweeping motion across the torso. The angle of presentation also changed the natural point of aim, meaning extensive practice was necessary to achieve accuracy under stress. However, those who invested the time found themselves with a carry system perfectly adapted to the realities of frontier life. The method's versatility extended beyond mounted combat. Cross-draw practitioners could engage targets to their weak side more effectively than strong-side carriers, providing tactical advantages in certain combat scenarios. The positioning also made weapon retention easier during physical altercations, as the grip angle made it more difficult for opponents to disarm the carrier. Training regimens for cross-draw specialists included extensive mounted practice, shooting from various seated positions, and developing the ability to transition smoothly between weapons when using dual holsters. This comprehensive approach created some of the most versatile gunfighters on the frontier. As effective as the cross-draw proved for mounted and seated shooting, an even more controversial method was gaining notoriety among the deadliest gunfighters of the era.
Number 4. Belt carry. Desperate times, desperate measures. When holsters were scarce, money was tight, or circumstances demanded improvisation, frontier fighters turned to one of the most dangerous carry methods ever employed, simply tucking their weapons into their belts or waistbands. This crude technique transformed desperation into lethality, though often at great risk to the carrier. The belt carry method placed the weapon directly against the body with only fabric and leather, preventing an accidental discharge. The grip protruded above the waistband, ready for a swift grab and draw motion. While this positioning offered excellent concealment under a coat or vest, it also created a nightmare scenario where the weapon could shift, rotate, or even fall during movement. What made belt carry particularly deadly wasn't its efficiency, it was its unpredictability. The weapon's position could change throughout the day, making consistent draw timing nearly impossible to achieve. This uncertainty often led to fumbled draws, accidental discharges, or worst of all, the gun becoming completely inaccessible when needed most. Yet those who mastered this chaotic system gained a reputation for being willing to take enormous risks for tactical advantage. Professional gunfighters sometimes employed belt carry as psychological warfare. The visible grip above the waistband served as a constant reminder of armed presence, while appearing somewhat casual and unthreatening. This positioning suggested either supreme confidence or reckless desperation, both intimidating prospects for potential opponents who understood the implications. The draw technique required careful practice to avoid snagging the front sight on belt material or clothing. Shooters had to develop a specific lifting and rotating motion that cleared the weapon while maintaining control throughout the process. The margin for error was razor thin. A snag at the wrong moment could prove fatal in a legitimate gunfight. Many carriers lined their belts with leather patches or used special belt configurations designed to hold weapons more securely. These modifications helped address some of the method's inherent problems while maintaining the advantages of quick access and psychological impact. However, even with these improvements, belt carry remained one of the more dangerous carry methods for the person using it. The technique found favor among those who needed to appear unarmed while maintaining defensive capability. Traveling merchants, card dealers, and others whose professions required a non-threatening appearance sometimes relied on belt carry to balance personal safety with professional necessity. The method's crude simplicity also made it accessible to those who couldn't afford proper leather holsters. Accidental discharges were a constant concern with belt carry, as the weapon's position placed the muzzle in dangerous proximity to vital organs. Stories circulated throughout frontier towns of gunfighters who met their end not through enemy action, but through their own carelessly carried weapons. This reputation for danger only added to the psychological impact of the method. But even this risky method pales in comparison to the concealed carry technique that claimed as many of its users as their intended targets. Number 3. Pocket carry. Concealed lightning in everyday clothes. Hidden within the ordinary pockets of vests, coats, and trousers across the Old West lurked weapons systems that could erupt into lethal action without warning. Pocket carry represented the ultimate in concealment, transforming everyday clothing into deadly weapon platforms that gave no external indication of their presence. The technique demanded specialized equipment and extensive modification of standard garments to function effectively. Successful pocket carriers lined their chosen pockets with leather to prevent fabric snagging and protect the weapon's finish during daily wear. The leather lining also created a smoother draw stroke, reducing the chance of the weapon catching on cloth fibers at the crucial moment. Famous gunfighters like John Wesley Hardin perfected pocket carry techniques that became legendary throughout the frontier. These masters understood that the method's power lay not just in concealment, but in the psychological impact of seeming completely unarmed while possessing instant access to deadly force. Opponents who thought they faced an unarmed man often discovered their fatal mistake too late. Pocket carry required careful selection of both weapon and clothing to function properly. The gun had to be compact enough to avoid printing through the fabric while maintaining sufficient power to end fights decisively. Derringers, short-barreled revolvers, and specially modified firearms found new life as pocket weapons. The clothing had to provide easy access while maintaining concealment through all normal activities, including sitting, walking, and physical labor. The draw technique itself demanded years of practice to master safely and effectively. The motion began with the hand moving naturally toward the pocket, appearing casual until the final instant. The weapon had to clear the pocket opening without snagging while rotating into a proper firing grip. Speed was essential because the close quarters nature of most pocket encounters left no time for corrections or second attempts. Professional gamblers particularly favored pocket carry because it allowed them to keep their hands visible on the table while maintaining defensive capability. Card games could continue normally until violence erupted, at which point the pocket weapon appeared as if by magic. This combination of concealment and accessibility made pocket carry the preferred method for anyone operating in environments where visible weapons were discouraged or prohibited. However, pocket carry came with severe limitations that could prove fatal in the wrong circumstances. The confined space made quick access challenging under stress, and the weapon's position meant accuracy suffered compared to traditional draw positions. The method also required constant awareness of the weapon's security within the pocket, as losing a concealed gun could be disastrous. Different pocket positions offered various advantages and disadvantages. Vest pockets provided excellent concealment, but limited the size of weapons that could be carried. Trouser pockets allowed for larger firearms but created obvious bulges that observant opponents might notice. Coat pockets offered the best balance of concealment and capacity, but required specific clothing choices that weren't always practical. Despite these challenges, pocket carry remained popular throughout the frontier period because it solved the fundamental problem of remaining armed in situations where weapons were unwelcome. The technique's very difficulty ensured that only dedicated practitioners attempted to master it, creating an elite group of concealed carriers whose reputation often preceded their actual skill. But while pocket carry offered ultimate concealment, another method provided the perfect balance between accessibility and intimidation. If you've got thoughts or questions, drop them in the comments below. We love hearing your insights. And who knows, your comment might even be featured in our next video. And don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community of Wild West enthusiasts. Number 2. The strong side drop holster, the classic killer's choice. Picture the iconic image of an Old West gunfighter. Gun belt slung low on the hip, holster positioned for a lightning-fast draw, weapon ready to leap into action at a moment's notice. This wasn't just Hollywood mythology. The strong side drop holster represented the most refined and deadly weapon carry system ever developed on the American frontier. The drop holster positioned the weapon low on the strong side, allowing the shooting hand to fall naturally to the grip without awkward reaching or positioning. This ergonomic advantage translated directly into speed, with master practitioners achieving draw-to-first shot times of well under 1 second. In an environment where fractions of seconds determined survival, this speed advantage often proved decisive in deadly encounters. The psychological impact of the drop holster cannot be overstated in the context of frontier violence and intimidation. The low-slung weapon was impossible to ignore, sending a clear message about the wearer's intentions and capabilities. This visible deterrent prevented many confrontations while simultaneously marking the carrier as someone not to be trifled with. The method created a reputation effect that extended far beyond individual gunfights, often preceding the gunfighter's arrival in new towns. Technical aspects of the draw made the strong side drop holster particularly lethal in trained hands. The motion began with the hand dropping straight down to the weapon, fingers automatically finding their proper grip positions through countless hours of practice. The gun cleared leather in a smooth upward arc, rotating into firing position as it rose toward the target. The entire sequence flowed as one continuous motion, making it extremely difficult for opponents to interrupt or counter once the draw began. The positioning also offered tactical advantages in various combat scenarios. Whether standing, walking, or even running, the drop holster maintained consistent accessibility without interfering with movement or other activities. The weapon's location meant it rarely interfered with other equipment or daily activities, while remaining instantly available when needed. This versatility made it the preferred choice for professional gunfighters who faced diverse tactical challenges and unpredictable combat situations. Modern fast-draw competitions still use equipment and techniques derived from Old West drop holsters. Competitors achieve incredible speed records that demonstrate the method's inherent advantages when perfected through dedicated practice. The sport has refined the historical techniques to their absolute limits, proving that the frontier gunfighters' methods were fundamentally sound from a mechanical standpoint. However, the drop holster's very visibility created problems in certain situations that limited its universal application. Towns with weapons ordinances, professional environments requiring discretion, or social situations where armed presence was unwelcome made the obvious gun belt impractical for daily wear. The low position also made the weapon more vulnerable to attempts at weapon retention or disarming by aggressive opponents who managed to close distance before the draw could be completed. Despite these limitations, the strong side drop holster became the gold standard for frontier weapon carry because it optimized the factors that mattered most in gunfights: speed, consistency, and psychological intimidation.
Yet even this proven system couldn't match the pure lethality and versatility of the most dangerous carry method ever developed.
Number 1. Dual pistol carry. Double death on the frontier.
When one gun wasn't enough and reload time could mean the difference between life and death, the most dangerous gunfighters of the Old West turned to the ultimate expression of frontier firepower, carrying two fully loaded weapons simultaneously. This wasn't the Hollywood fantasy of blazing away with both hands. It was a calculated tactical system designed to provide maximum ammunition capacity and minimum downtime in extended gunfights.
The dual pistol system typically employed one gun in a strong side holster and another in a cross-draw position, creating what modern tactical experts would recognize as primary and backup weapon deployment. When the primary weapon ran empty, the shooter could immediately transition to the fresh gun without the potentially fatal delay of reloading under fire. This capability proved invaluable in situations where multiple opponents or extended engagements were expected. Professional lawmen facing organized criminal gangs particularly favored dual carry because it provided the firepower necessary to survive overwhelmingly bad odds. A sheriff entering a saloon full of hostiles or a marshal tracking a gang of bank robbers needed every advantage available. The psychological impact of facing an opponent with two visible weapons often caused enemies to reconsider their aggressive intentions. The dual pistol setup announced that the carrier was not only prepared for violence, but expected it on a scale requiring multiple weapons. This reputation effect often prevented confrontations before they began. The technical execution of dual pistol fighting required years of training to achieve true proficiency. Shooters had to develop ambidextrous skills while mastering completely different draw techniques for each weapon. The strong side gun employed traditional draw mechanics, while the cross-draw weapon required the sweeping motion across the torso. Coordinating these different muscle memory patterns under extreme stress demanded extensive practice and natural coordination abilities. Ammunition management became a critical skill in dual pistol systems that could determine survival outcomes. Experienced practitioners learned to keep mental track of rounds fired from each weapon, ensuring they always knew which gun had ammunition available. Some developed counting systems or physical markers to help maintain awareness during the chaos of combat. The ability to transition smoothly from empty to loaded weapon often determined the outcome of gunfights involving multiple opponents or extended duration. The method's lethality stemmed not just from increased firepower, but from the tactical flexibility it provided in complex combat situations. Dual pistol carriers could engage multiple targets simultaneously, maintain suppressive fire while maneuvering for better positions, or keep one weapon in reserve for close-quarters defense, while using the other for longer-range engagement. This versatility made them formidable opponents in any combat scenario they might encounter. However, dual carry also presented significant challenges that limited its widespread adoption among frontier fighters. The additional weight and bulk of two complete weapon systems created fatigue and movement restrictions during extended periods of wear. The complexity of managing two different weapons increased the chance of mechanical failures or user errors under stress when fine motor skills deteriorated. The visibility of dual weapons also made the carrier an obvious target for opponents seeking to eliminate the most dangerous threat first. These techniques shaped the legend and reality of the American West, creating a culture where the difference between life and death often came down to fractions of seconds and inches of positioning. The men and women who mastered these systems became the stuff of legend, their names echoing through history as masters of the deadliest game ever played. Which of these lethal carry styles surprised you the most? Have you ever wondered which method would have given you the best chance of survival on the frontier? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which technique you think was truly the deadliest. And if you're fascinated by these forgotten secrets of frontier warfare, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the brutal realities that shaped the American West. There's so much more to discover about the weapons, techniques, and legends that defined one of history's most dangerous eras. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the shadows of the past.